Hello everybody, welcome back to the Mermaid's Cave. I'm Leslie Levison and we are on a dazzling crazy quilt adventure. Today we're going to be doing a sheaf stitch, a mock sheaf stitch. The sheaf stitch then turns into a dragonfly, stem stitch, and the Betty Scrunch. So let's get going. Thread up your needles and we'll get started. For the first stitch, we're going to do a sheaf stitch, and I'm using a number 5 pearl cotton. And we're going to just start right here. I've already done a row of them there. And what we do is we have 3 straight stitches, we want 3 straight stitches that are not right next to each other. It's not a satin stitch, but a thread widths apart, like that. Okay. Then we are going to just take it around. Oops. We're going to bring our needle up kind of on the inside of that first stitch, like so. So we're pushing the stitches a little bit in. It's like everybody wants to get into the act. And then we're going to take the needle down and go back. And again, we're pushing in the side. So when you pull it tight, it forms like an hourglass or a sheaf stitch, like a sheaf of wheat. Okay, so that's our sheaf stitch. So again, we're going to go three stitches close together, but not right next to each other. And we come up on the inside of that stitch, the first stitch, and then we go down to the inside of the last stitch. And it makes the sheaf. Now, the sheaf stitch can now become a dragonfly, and I'm going to show you how to do that. First, I'm going to knot off my thread here. And for the dragonfly, I'm going to use the 1/16 inch flat ribbon, which is from, I showed you this last week, it's from Quilting. And comes in a lot of different colors. We are going to use a metallic green. So I make my sheaf stitch same as before. So three lines. Now, there's a thing called a trolley needle, which is basically a thimble with a needle at the edge, and that's what is used to lay the threads flat. So if we were at the Royal School of Needlework, we would definitely have a trolley needle. But since I'm not, I'm just going to use the needle I have at hand. I have a funny story about the Royal School of Needlework. First time I went to London, I, ventured into the Royal School of Needlework, and I expected that you just walk in and there'd be people sitting and stitching, which was not really the case. It's not so informal. Of course, now I would have, being a more experienced world traveler, I would have called ahead and made an appointment and, wanted to see some collections or something. But back in those days, I just thought that just walk into a place and they're going to love you for showing up. Okay, so now we have our dragonfly wings. I'm going to come up at the top of the dragonfly, make a long stitch down, maybe a little bit longer than the wingspan. I don't know what the exact proportions for a dragonfly are, correct, but I like that kind of look. And then for the head, we're just going to take, oops, there we are. We're just going to take a little back stitch over here and just make just a suggestion of a head. Now, if you're a real, if you're a real bug person, of course you can add 2 little beads on either side to make it look like the eyes. But for me, this is good enough. I'm not really, I think dragonflies are beautiful and I love watching them, but I don't need my insects to be so real on my quilts. Okay, let's see if we can get this correct. Okay, so there's my dragonfly. So we've done a sheaf stitch and we've done a dragonfly made with a sheaf stitch. Now I want to show you a fake sheaf stitch, which is what this is. So once again, I'm going to knot off my thread. And for this, I'm going to use the number 5 pearl cotton again. So you can see it looks similar to the sheaf stitch, but it's actually just straight stitches that have been couched down with a satin stitch, basically. So to do this, I am going to, I'm going to knot my thread. And just for demonstration's sake, I'm only going to do 2 straight stitches on either side of my center stitch. Actually, I think I'm going to relocate my center stitch. That looks better. And then I'm going to come down here and do the same thing. So I'm going to have my long center stitch. If you want the sides to be perfectly even, you can put a little mark on your fabric. I tend to go for a more organic look with my stitching. And actually, I look at crazy quilts that I made when I first started doing them back in 1987. And the stitches are all so even and neat and little, and like, it's not what I do now. Now they're big and unapologetic. So then where you have that little space there, you're just going to do, whoops, sorry. You're just going to do a little satin stitch. Satin stitch is just a series of straight stitches that are all done right next to the other. And to get a nice satin stitch, you want to always go back to the same place. In other words, I'm going back around to where I came up originally and down. I'm not bringing my needle here. I want to bring it back over here to keep the tension on it. Now, if I were doing a proper satin stitch, on a big piece, I would probably first outline the shape in a chain stitch, maybe do chain stitch padding, and for sure, work it in a hoop. So there we have a fake one. Now, our next stitch is a stem stitch, which is very easy. It's similar to an outline stitch. So to do a stem stitch, you simply put your needle in and come back. So there we have a very simple stem stitch. Okay, I'm going to take my needle down and tie it off. Now, the next thing we're going to do is the Betty Scrunch. I call it the Betty Scrunch because Betty Pillsbury, crazy quilter extraordinaire, invented this. There was a group of us that used to meet once a month up in Pepperell, Massachusetts at a thread shop, and we called ourselves the Crones, Crazy Royalty of New England Stitchers. And Betty was amazing, and this was something she came up with. So you have lots of little scraps from your silk ribbon adventures, right? And what do you do with them? Silk ribbon is expensive. You don't want to waste it. So with just a regular sewing needle and thread, and I'm going to just come up along my stem stitch, and now you can see these are not very long pieces, like maybe 2 inches. You could work with less. I'm going to start doing a running stitch in my silk ribbon. And just kind of go all the way to the end. So you can see that it's right at the end there. Just scrunch it down and then take my needle back down through it and scrunch. And there you have a lovely little flower. It's very impressionistic. It's not going to fool anybody into thinking that's a real rose, but it uses up little bits of silk ribbon. And when you do a lot of them, it's very effective. Okay, so that's what, here I've just done a feather stitch with some Betty Scrunches on there. So I wanted to just share with you a few things. This is what those scrunches look like on the crazy quilt. So I have my rose, the scrunchy rose, a dragonfly, a sheath mirror from last week. Here's some feather stitch, which we did earlier with some beads. And then I also want to share with you an amazing book. This is, again, I apologize, this is probably not in print anymore. It's a Treasury of Crazy Quilt Stitches by Carol Samples. And it was published by the American Quilter Society. And Carol kind of followed in the footsteps of Dorothy Bond and created an amazing compendium of stitch ideas. And Dorothy even wrote the foreword for Carol's books. But I love this because it really was inspiring to me. I would take her pages and then work them in stitches. Now I worked this on linen. So it's, you know, and this is LL 2000, MM, LL for me, MM for the year 2000. So it's just a pretty sample of what you can do. And here's another example of stitches from her book. Kind of a staircase effect with the buttonhole stitch. Here's another sheaf stitch. And then a decorated buttonhole stitch with French knots and lazy daisy stitches. And here's another one. Again, this is a sheaf stitch with some lazy daisies on top. A zigzag chain with some detail on that. And then just a big feather stitch, a buttonhole stitch done on a slant. And then here is, this is a class I used to teach on silk ribbon, and we would do the shishimura with the silk ribbon like we did last time. And here's some Betty Scrunches. You can see those. And there's some other silk ribbon techniques that we'll get to over the time that we do videos, that I do the videos, and you watch them, and subscribe, and like, and comment. For next week, we're going to be doing beaded swag, and we're also going to be making butterflies. So you will need, the only different thread you're going to need is, goodbye, Carol, is, this is called Rhapsody. There's also a brand that's called Rachel. I think that's Karen Threads does Rachel. And it's basically a nylon tubular knit, like a pantyhose. And you can see it kind of runs like a pantyhose. But it makes a lovely butterfly. So this is what we're going to be doing next time, among other things. So thank you for tuning into the Mermaid's Cave, and I will see you in a week or two. Bye-bye for now.